Summer is coming to an end here in Australia, but I've got just enough time to make a couple more summer dresses before it starts getting colder. And today, I'm going to show you how I made the pattern for this boxy dartless dress. It's the perfect summer staple, and it's so easy to make. Just follow these 3 simple steps.
Hi, welcome to Pattern Making with Leigh. In this video, you'll learn how to
Remove a centre back seam, make a fitted dress block loose and remove the darts, and add a vent at the neck.
When creating patterns, you'll get much better results quicker if you start with a block. And today I'm going to be using my 1 dart fitted dress block, which you can buy on my website, clickedpatternkits.com.
This block is different from a normal torso block because it combines the usual 2 darts on the front into 1 non-pointy dart.
Which is great if you want to create dresses that are really fitted but keep darts to a minimum, but it's also the block I use when I want to remove darts, and I'll explain why later, but now let's get rid of the centre back seam first.
I've got my block printed on A0 paper. I'm just cutting out the pieces. I only need the front and the back, and I'm leaving quite a bit of space at the sides so I can extend the pattern. To remove the centre back seam, I'll grab my back pattern, find the hip line, and draw a vertical line straight up and down the back from that point. This is your new centre back line. I'm going to cut mine on the fold so there won't be a seam here anymore.
Great, the centre back seam is now gone. And you can see that by doing that, we actually add a bit of extra width across the back here, which is perfect. We'll just make it a bit more comfy and loose. Now, let's see how to make the block loose. The first thing you need to think about is how much bigger you want the pattern to be than your body. And I want mine to be really boxy, so my side seams will be completely straight.
This means I only need to focus on how much bigger the dress is at the hip, which is my widest point. Then go straight up.
However, if you want something more tapered so it's closer to the armhole and bust there,
work out how much bigger you want to be at the hip and bust. Then connect the 2 points. You can see how this approach makes more of a teepee shape though.
I'm a visual person, so I like to get a measuring tape and actually put it around my hips and to see how much I want to add at the side seams. And I'm thinking about 5 centimeters to each side seam will be a good starting point for me.
I'll start with the back and make a mark 5 centimeters out along the hip line. Then just draw a vertical line straight up.
Also, if the block you're using doesn't match your measurements exactly, make sure you take the difference into account. So if the block is smaller, you need to add more to your pattern, and if the block is bigger, you need to add less to your pattern.
Then I'm going to drop the armhole a bit so it finishes around the bust line and blend the existing armhole down to it and add all the seam allowances.
I don't like dropping the armhole too much of boxy styles because when you extend the armhole out and add extra width to fabric, it drops with gravity as well.
Last thing on the back, I'm going to extend the hem so it's 50 centimeters from the waist. I think this will be too long for me, but I like a bit of wiggle room.
And that's the back done. Now let's do the front. And the best thing about using my 1 dart fitted dress block is I don't have to remove the bust dart like I would if I was using a regular torso block. I can just completely ignore it, which is amazing. And I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. So if you want to learn more about making dartless blocks, check out this video. I'll leave a link to it in the description as well. Essentially, it compares the traditional method for removing bust darts with my much less painful approach.
I've got my front here, and as I said, I can just completely ignore the front dart. So I'll mark the same distance out along the hip line and draw a vertical line up. And I'll just remove the dart and the bust line because I'll need to redraw that later. Then I'll drop the armhole so it matches the back and blend this new point with the original armhole. Then I'll add some more paper so I can extend my hem.
I know I said I can completely ignore the dart, but there is one little catch.
Most of the dart excess is here within the pattern, so I can ignore it when I make my boxy silhouette. But there is a tiny bit of excess here at the side seam, which, if I left and ignored it, would make the front side seam longer than the back. It's really minor, like 1.3 centimeters, so half an inch, and to get rid of it, all I have to do is raise the hip and hem line so it matches the back. I can do this really easily by simply truing my side seam. All I do is lie the front over the back at the side seam, making sure the armhole is on top of each other and the bust and waistline notches match. Then I'll just mark where the hip and hem line should be on the front. Easy.
Truing is a really important part of checking and finishing your patterns. And if you've never heard of truing or need some help or want a little checklist or guide to help you finish off your patterns, make sure you head to my website
and subscribe to my newsletter. Then I'll send you the 10-step pattern checklist I use to check my patterns before I send them to production, as well as a 10% discount code for your first clicked pattern kit order. And back to the demo, let's cut these patterns out, twirl them in calico, and see how it's looking. While I'm cutting out in calico, I'm going to add my front neck vent in. I think I want to finish it around the bust line so I can still wear a bra. So while the fabric is still on the fold, I'll mark the bust line with a pin, grab some scissors, and cut down to this point.
Adding a neck vent is an easy way to keep a high, cooler neckline, but get a little skin out too. And the best thing about it is to make the neck circumference big enough so that you don't need to sew a zip.
Because this vent isn't on a seam, I need to draw a rectangular wedge on my pattern to create a seam allowance to finish the vent. To do this, mark the end of the vent with a drill hole. Then, make a mark 0.5 centimeters, so 1/4 inch, either side of the vent opening. My pattern is on the fold, so you can only see one side, and connect these points with the drill hole. These lines are now your seam, and the wedge is a seam allowance to finish the facing. Okay, let's go check out this twirl. The fit-wise, it's technically fine, but it's a bit more boxy than I want it, so I'm going to bring it in by 2 centimeters on each side seam, and probably raise the hem 3 centimeters too. And I'm just quickly making these adjustments by repinning my twirl. I often pin twirls if I can, it just makes these adjustments easier to make. And I'll raise the hem by 3 centimeters too. Okay, let's check out round 2. Ooh, I'm loving the fit. Side seam is straight, hem is straight, which is great, it means it's not swaying. The bust where I removed the dart is looking good too. Remember, if boxy isn't your thing, you can always taper the side seam in so it's closer to the armhole. I'm also going to drop the vent a couple of centimeters so it's a bit lower too.
And that's it. So I'll make my updates to my pattern. So I'll bring the side seam in by 2 centimeters, raise the hem by 3 centimeters, and then drop the vent opening by 2 centimeters.
Then I'll cut it out in my fabric and sew it up. And it's done. This dress is relatively simple, but it's the perfect base to start creating any beach, boho, or day wear dresses. So order my 1 dart fur dress block and start creating.
And if you need help making a pattern for your own design, order the guide that comes with the 1 dart fur dress block.
It will show you how to contour, add style lines, mask out the draping, add volume, create patterns for common design features like pockets and ruffles, so everything you need to create design based off this block.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I've got lots more DIY pattern making videos you can follow along to make your own wardrobe, like this one.